It's with a heavy heart that I share with you this afternoon that a Placer County resident has died from COVID-19. The deceased is the same resident announced yesterday as Placer County's second case of COVID-19 and is an elderly individual who had multiple underlying medical conditions. The individual developed symptoms while on a Princess cruise from San Francisco to Mexico. They were treated at Kaiser Permanente Roseville since February 27th and passed away early this morning. I want to express my sincere condolences to the loved ones of this patient. I also want to thank the healthcare workers at Kaiser Permanente Roseville who have provided outstanding care in this challenging situation. This death represents the first death in the state of California from COVID-19 and marks a tragic milestone for our community. While we expected more COVID-19 cases and eventually deaths, this death in our second case is a sobering reminder that while the vast majority of cases of COVID-19 worldwide have been mild, older persons and persons with underlying medical conditions are at increased risk of serious disease. Placer County Public Health has been conducting intensive contact tracing to identify and contact healthcare workers and community members who were exposed to this individual within the Placer community. Preliminary understanding from the contact investigation is that this patient had minimal community exposure between returning from the cruise and arriving at the hospital by ambulance on February 27th. We are working with partners in Sacramento County and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to identify and contact persons who may have been exposed on the cruise ship or during return transit from San Francisco to Placer County. All healthcare and emergency medical services personnel who were exposed to the deceased have been identified and notified. We are following CDC protocols to assess their risk based on what personal protective equipment they were wearing at the time of exposure, and are quarantining personnel as needed and monitoring them for development of symptoms. 10 healthcare workers at Kaiser Permanente Roseville and 5 emergency medical services personnel were exposed and are under quarantine for 14 days. All of these persons are asymptomatic. Some of these employees did have contact with the public after being exposed to the confirmed case, but because they had no symptoms during that time and remain without symptoms, the risk of transmission of COVID-19 to the public based on exposure to these asymptomatic workers is very low, if any. There is no increased risk to patients seeking care at Kaiser Permanente Roseville. Moving forward, to prevent future exposure of EMS personnel, Placer County Public Health has advised local 911 dispatch to screen callers for respiratory symptoms so that first responders can take appropriate precautions when responding to emergency calls. The deceased was a passenger on a Princess cruise from San Francisco to Mexico on February 11th to February 21st. At least one other passenger on the same cruise ship from another county tested presumptively positive for COVID-19. The CDC and Princess Cruises are working to notify all passengers of their possible exposure. At this time, out of an abundance of precaution, Placer County Public Health is requesting that any individuals who were local passengers on this voyage voluntarily self-quarantine and monitor themselves for symptoms. Should they develop fever, cough, or shortness of breath, they should notify Placer County Public Health.